Have you ever stared at your phone, waiting for a text that never came? Maybe you'd been in the middle of a conversation, laughing and connecting, and then suddenly, silence. The little reed mark sits there like a stone in your chest. You feel your heartbeat rise, your stomach sink, and before you know it, your mind is racing. Did I say something wrong? Are they losing interest? Maybe I'm just not enough. It's amazing, isn't it, how quickly our thoughts can spin a whole storm out of one tiny moment. But here's what's fascinating and painful. Most of the time, it isn't really the missing text or the silence that breaks us down. It's the story we tell ourselves afterward. And if we can learn to soften that inner voice, if we can begin with compassion for ourselves, suddenly our relationships, romantic, family, friendships, start to feel lighter and safer. Because the truth is, the way you talk to yourself becomes the climate in which your relationships breathe. So today, I want to share 7 Buddhist lessons about self-compassion and healthy relationships. They aren't rules to memorize. They're more like lanterns you can carry, lighting the path through messy human love. And if you stay with me, at the end, we'll walk through a few simple practices you can use tonight. Whether you're single, married, a parent, or just trying to reconnect with yourself. Lesson 1, self-compassion is not self-indulgence. Think about Mia, a young woman working long hours at a demanding job. One week she misses a deadline. The moment it happens, she spirals. I'm such a failure. My boss will never trust me again. Why can't I get it right? She spends the night replaying her mistake, punishing herself as if the whip of her own judgment could somehow make her better. And yet, what happens? She doesn't become stronger. She becomes paralyzed. She hesitates on the next assignment. She loses sleep. The shame becomes heavier than the actual mistake. Now imagine a different voice. After that missed deadline, Mia takes one breath, places a hand gently over her heart, and whispers, "This is hard. May I be kind to myself? May I learn something from this?" The mistake is still real. The consequence is still there. But instead of being drowned by shame, she's steady enough to face it, to apologize, to improve. That's the difference between indulgence and compassion. Indulgence ignores reality. Compassion faces it with gentleness. Buddhism begins with metta, loving kindness. Western psychology has proven the same thing. We grow more resilient when coached by an inner ally, not an inner bully. And here's the truth. You cannot pour patience into your relationships if your own cup is already empty. Lesson 2, the second arrow. The Buddha once taught that pain is like being struck by an arrow. But most of us, he said, don't stop there. We pick up another arrow and stab ourselves with it. That's the suffering on top of the pain. Picture this. Your partner forgets to call when they promised. That's the first arrow, the missed call. It stings, of course. But then your mind starts. They never think about me. I'm not a priority. Maybe they don't really love me at all. And now the second arrow is lodged deep. Or think of scrolling Instagram and seeing your friends' engagement photos. The first arrow is the natural ache. I wish I had that. The second arrow is the story. I'll be alone forever. Something is wrong with me. The practice is simple, but not easy. Name it when it happens. This is the second arrow. Take one slow breath in, one slow breath out. Choose the next kind action. Send a warm text to a friend, drink a glass of water, step outside into the air. Do anything that moves you back into presence, not the spiral. Because the truth is, the first arrow is already hard enough. Don't wound yourself twice. And when we stop stabbing ourselves with second arrows, something surprising happens. We suddenly notice how much of our anxiety in relationships comes from trying to grip too tightly, as if love will slip away unless we control every detail. Which brings us to the next lesson. Lesson 3. Non-attachment builds trust. Non-attachment is one of the most misunderstood teachings. Some people hear it and think it means detachment, coldness, or not caring. But really, it means the opposite. It means loving with open hands instead of clenched fists. Imagine holding a butterfly. If you grip too tightly, you crush it. If you hold it gently, openly, it may rest with you for a long while. But it also has the freedom to fly. That freedom is part of love. Think of Jordan, who checks their partner's location constantly, scrolls through old likes, tests them with little traps to prove their loyalty. The tighter the grip, the more suffocated the partner feels. And ironically, the more Jordan clings, the more trust erodes. Buddhism teaches us that love is not ownership. Western psychology echoes it in the science of attachment. Secure love is built on both safety and autonomy. Real closeness happens not when you're chained together, but when you both feel free and still choose each other. So here's a reframe for moments of fear. I choose care, not control. I'm responsible for the love I give, not the outcome I can't force. And remember this, letting go isn't losing love, it's loving wisely. But loving wisely doesn't mean becoming careless. In fact, it often means the opposite, learning how to set boundaries that protect your energy so your love can last. Lesson 4, boundaries are love. A lot of us grow up thinking boundaries mean rejection, that if you set a limit, you're pushing someone away. But the truth is, boundaries are what allow relationships to breathe. They're not walls. They're fences with gates, clear, kind, and open. Think about a parent who answers every midnight call from their grown child, even when it drains them. Over time, resentment builds. Why do they always take me for granted? But here's the thing, resentment is often the echo of a boundary we never voiced. In Buddhism, the middle way reminds us not to swing to extremes. Too rigid and love breaks. Too loose and love bleeds dry. Boundaries are the middle way in action. It can be as gentle as saying, I love you and I'm available to talk tomorrow after 8 a.m. Clear, kind, sustainable, because when you set a boundary, you don't shrink love, you protect it. And when resentment drains away, something new arises, the ability to feel joy for others instead of comparison. Lesson 5, mudita, joy for others. Mudita is one of my favorite Buddhist words. It means sympathetic joy or gladness at the happiness of others. And it's the exact opposite of envy. Picture Alex and Taylor, two co-workers up for the same promotion. When Taylor gets the role, Alex feels the sting of disappointment. That's natural. But envy quickly whispers, they don't deserve it, I'll never get ahead. That poison eats away at both the friendship and Alex's self-worth. Now imagine instead that Alex pauses, breathes, and says, Taylor worked hard. I'm glad for them, and I can use their success as inspiration for my own path. That's mudita. It doesn't erase Alex's ambition. It transforms the energy of comparison into fuel for growth. The truth is, someone else's light doesn't make your light dimmer. Their win expands what's possible for you. And yet, no matter how much joy we can feel for others, storms will still come. Fights, misunderstandings, disappointments, they are inevitable. which leads us to the sixth lesson. Lesson 6: Impermanence and Repair. We often forget that emotions are weather, not climate. You can have a thunderstorm without losing the summer. In Buddhism, this is impermanence, anicca. Every feeling, no matter how sharp, will pass. This is crucial in relationships. Too many couples wait until the storm has passed completely before reaching out. But repair doesn't need perfect skies. In fact, it's often most powerful when it comes quickly, gently, in the middle of the rain. It can be as simple as saying, "When you said, I felt, I care about us. Can we try again?" You don't need eloquence. You need sincerity. Because the truth is, strong relationships aren't built by avoiding fights. They're built by repairing often and repairing well. And for repair to work, we need one more skill, the foundation beneath all of it. Listening. Lesson 7: Deep Listening Heals. Thich NH letter 1EA5T, H letter 1EA1NH, the great Zen master, called it compassionate listening. The purpose of listening, he said, isn't to offer advice, it's to help the other person suffer less. Imagine a friend sitting across from you, spilling out the weight they've been carrying all day. The temptation is to jump in with fixes. Here's what you should do, but often what heals isn't advice. It's presence, the slow nod, the soft breath, the words, "I'm here, tell me more." There's an old Zen story about a teacup. When the cup is already full, nothing else can be poured. Listening is the act of emptying your cup so that someone else's truth can flow in. And here's what happens when you do. Their nervous system settles, their walls drop. Sometimes they find their own answer simply because they were finally heard. The takeaway is simple but life-changing. Presence is medicine. Advice is optional. When you weave all 7 lessons together, something shifts. You start with compassion for yourself. You learn to stop firing second arrows. You release the grip of control and replace it with trust. You set boundaries that protect love. You practice mudita, rejoicing in others. You remember impermanence and lean into repair. And you listen deeply, making space for others to be fully seen. Together, these teachings create a climate where relationships can breathe, grow, and heal. So how do we practice? Start small. A 1-minute loving kindness meditation each night. A short breathing reset before tough conversations. A no-phone hour with your family. A simple repair attempt after conflict. These little steps, repeated, become the soil where love takes root. And remember this, love doesn't have to be a performance of perfection. Love is the daily art of returning to each other, step by step, even when we stumble. That's the heart of it. Love grows where your inner voice turns kind, and the way we treat ourselves sets the tone for every bond we cherish. So I'd love to ask you, which of these 7 lessons feels most alive for you right now? Share it in the comments. I'd love to read your reflections. This is daily Buddhist wisdom, helping you find peace in a busy world. If this message touched you, subscribe and stay with us on the journey. And in the next episode, we'll explore how mindfulness can ease anxiety in just a few minutes a day, even in the middle of your busiest schedule. Because peace isn't something you wait for. It's something you can practice here and now.